Joining us in the Informer studio is Sanjeev Sabla, who's been an economist, was part of the state government team for the better part of, was it 13, 15 years?
15 years, yes.
Wow. Welcome to the Informer.
Thank you, George.
Now, the reason we're here in the studio is I want to talk to you about your decision to leave at the time from your position as a leading economist for the state government. Why did you do it? Why did you take such a big step, especially during the pandemic when people need their jobs? The last thing they want is to be without a job.
Yeah, George, in brief, the policies that I was seeing happening around me in Victoria were getting from bad to worse. And the thing that really prompted this whole thing was the police state that was created by Dan Andrews, where he started beating up the Victorians, including young men and women. One went to the ICU. And I say he got his police to do that. And why he authorized them to do that? And why? Because he thought that this is a thing that needs everyone to wear these masks outdoors, which are absolutely irrelevant from the medical literature perspective. And then he went berserk. And when I started raising these concerns on my social media accounts, I was asked to remove them. And that, I think, is censorship, and that I do not agree. I've also raised a lot of concerns about the policy within my department, and I've FOI'd some of my emails.
So you were warned. They said to you, basically, you're a professional, you're working for us. The last thing we want you to be is someone with an opinion.
Yes.
That's in the public space. In other words, posting material that may be contrary to government policy.
It was completely contrary to the view. I was calling this Victorians as a police state.
All right. Now explain to me, why did you think that what Daniel Andrews' policy, especially the beginnings of the early days of the pandemic, why was it so out of kilter with what you believed in?
Well, interestingly, I figured out later when I wrote my book, The Great Hysteria and the Broken State, that there was a proper pandemic plan in Victoria issued on the 10th of March. It was meant specifically for this virus.
Okay.
And that pandemic plan, George, was really good.
And you had faith in that policy?
I didn't know about that plan at that stage.
Okay.
But when I read that plan, because my angle was from the economic and regulatory policy perspective. I've never seen such bad policy in my life. But when I looked at the pandemic plan, official pandemic plan, that was actually absolutely fine. And later on, I've discovered that the similar approaches were found in all the pandemic plans of all the Western nations across the world, including Sweden. That's what they've implemented. What happened, George, and this is the big question, what went wrong between the 10th of March and the 23rd of March when the curfews were imposed and the emergency became effective from the 16th of March. I think at that stage, I refer back to the epidemiological models of Neil Ferguson from Imperial College, who's been wrong the whole of his life on every single thing that he's ever written. That's his track record. He goes out and says that there'll be 500,000 deaths in the UK, creating a hysteria, mass hysteria in the media. Media loves hysterias, and why did they do that? Because they get eyeballs. Everybody's watching them. Everything else is dropped and all other programs are gone. They're watching the news and they're getting all this advertising dollars. So media loved this whole thing. They created a hysteria. And of course, human beings are designed for hysteria. We are very fearful creatures. We just scurry away when something goes wrong. And that's what led to this. I think the momentum shifted completely politically, that it was impossible to implement that flattening the curve, going slow and steady, and doing the voluntary social distancing, etc.
So, Sanjeev, it's extraordinary to believe. I understand the hysteria component. I understand your criticism of elements of the media. There are some elements of the media that make me even fearful with their antics and their strategies. But there are a great many professionals, men and women around the world, who do a terrific job. And I can't imagine how they've all got on board and towed the line and told the story that we have a pandemic that is a major health concern to each and every country. And as we noticed, you don't stop major airlines from travelling the world and carrying people unless they believe there's a serious danger.
Yeah.
So here we are, a few months down the track, and despite all the criticism, in fact, incredibly, with all the criticism, Victoria stands almost 27 days without an active case, which is extraordinary from where they were after the fiasco in the bungle and the quarantine hotel. And the only challenge to the current situation in Victoria is next week when they start again opening and accepting overseas travellers, and we have to quarantine them in hotels in Melbourne. That is the only danger everyone is talking about. So
Yes.
now I understand where you're coming from.
Yes,
right?
completely different position. Yes.
How do you? This is the challenge. If the numbers were continuing to be out of control, I would say to you, there's great merit in what you say. But there'd be people out there saying, "Come on, Sanjeev, Victoria's got Victoria's active situation down almost to nil. In fact, it is nil, and all the other states in Australia, after closing the borders, which we'd rather not see in a country in any country, but we've had it to endure it, and suddenly we're getting the positive results. So how do you counter that?
Well, the first thing is Daniel Andrews. I challenge him to prove to me that he's eradicated this virus from the planet Earth. Number one.
No, he hasn't.
If he cannot do that, this whole thing is a farce. It is not a remedy. It is a kind of a hiding behind the screen, hiding behind reality. Number two, I asked Daniel Andrews and anybody in Victoria to look at the data and prove to me that this actually is killing people in the overall analysis. So I have looked at the data of Sweden, which is the only country which allowed the virus to spread without lockdowns.
They didn't close down anything.
They followed the pandemic plan that Victoria had. They followed the exact process.
Their attitude was herd immunity.
No, their attitude was not herd immunity, John.
No?
That's a big mistake that people make. Their
Okay.
attitude was always clear, flattening the curve. That is the policy in medical science. It's not the herd immunity strategy that keeps people talking about. They said, let us slow down the spread of the virus and look after the elderly.
Okay, so social distancing came
All that
in
stuff, yes.
and washing your hands.
That's exactly
which everyone should do.
Which everyone was supposed to do, and that's how you manage these flu-like pandemics. Because number one, these flu pandemics do not spread to everybody. It's only a small proportion that get them. And if you do the social distancing, it spreads slowly, and by the time the season is over, and it's done. And then you have a flattening and so on. And the herd immunity concept is a very theoretical concept. Let's not go there because I've done a lot of research on that. But the flattening of the curve, which is what the claims were made by Daniel Andrews repeatedly, even in Parliament, and he's lied to the people of Victoria every day of his life for the last 6 months. He's lied. He's been trying to eradicate, and that's why they're celebrating this alleged eradication. But it's not eradicated from the planet.
No.
Okay? No. So what we had to do is to make sure that we followed our pandemic plan. Number two, we've seen in Sweden that the total number of deaths, additional deaths, they are 90,000 on an average year. The 88,000 last year, about 93,000 in the previous year, but the fluctuation of 2,000 and 3,000. This year, there's going to be, my estimate is clear from the official data, there's 2,500 extra people who will die in Sweden compared to last year. But they'll be just compared to 2018, compared to 2018.
Right. So
therefore, it means it's a little bit of a bad flu.
Yep.
It is definitely not a crisis kind of a next bigger thing than the Spanish flu. So Daniel Andrews has lied through his teeth. He's called it a Spanish flu. It's not. Brett Sutton has lied through his teeth. They're trying to say that we've eradicated the virus. They're lying, and they're taking the people of Victoria for a ride, big ride.
Look, he's not the only one that's called it a Spanish flu or said it's of that making.
Yes.
Everyone needed to find some anchor point, and the anchor point was the Spanish flu a century ago. But in the storytelling, would you like to see done ASAP?
I would like
to remedy not only the situation, but to get us opening the state, opening the country, and opening again the international gateways, which allow people to not only leave Australia, but to arrive in Australia.
George, the first thing is people need to stop being scared and hysterical. Daniel Andrews has taken them for a big ride. Either he's himself very scared that he should not be as a premier. He should be looking to rational people like me who advise him, or he should just look at the data for the first time in his life. There is no evidence of this pandemic. Even for Ebola, and I've proved in my complaint to the ICC, in the International Criminal Court, that it is proven in the science that even for Ebola, when the lockdowns were applied, they were not effective. So lockdowns are not effective even for Ebola. How could they be effective for the flu? So the lockdowns have been proven in the science repeatedly in the 2020 literature as well that they have not actually made any difference. In fact, I've argued in my complaint, they've made things worse because your resources got distracted to different things. So in Victoria, we have not eradicated the virus. We're scared shit. That's the word I should use because everyone is like berserk. Just look at the facts, please. Look at my complaint to the ICC that has a lot of the facts. I've got the facts in my book. I'm trying to provide the data and the evidence. And once that isn't seen, you become normal and then you start doing the right thing.
The name of the book again is
The Great Hysteria and the Broken State.
The Great Hysteria and the Broken State. Sanjeev Zablok, our guest on The Informer. Thank you.
Thank you, George.